All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into something I gotta admit I had to look up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, membranophone,
Okay.
musical instrument maker.
Right.
Not something you hear every day.
I mean, it's very specific.
It is, but it turns out it covers a lot more than just like, drums, which is what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting how it brings in like that traditional craft, but then also like all these new demands.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm curious about. Like if someone out there's listening and they're thinking, membranophone musical instrument maker, that's me. What does that actually look like day to day? What are they actually doing?
So much more than just like banging on drums all day.
Right.
Like you have to be super precise, like part musician, part engineer. You're reading these diagrams, you're choosing materials, wood, metal, synthetics, and you have to shape it all, put it all together.
There was this one part in the research that said they have to meticulously stretch and attach the membrane to deliver a finely tuned and expertly crafted musical instrument.
The membrane, that's
Yeah.
key. That's your drum head and getting that right. That's like the art and the science of it all.
Because it's controlling the sound.
Totally. Yeah, how it resonates, how it projects everything.
See, that's not something I would have thought about right away, but it's
Right.
like, oh yeah, acoustics.
Huge. That's what they're doing, shaping sound itself.
Hmm.
It's not just about, is it wood, is it metal? How big is the body? What kind of membrane do you use? It all goes into it.
So is this like a secure job? I mean, is this something with staying power?
What I've been seeing is it's pretty stable,
Okay.
which is good. And you've got that constant demand from traditional music, orchestras, marching bands, even folk music. But what's really cool is how much modern and electronic percussion is growing.
Oh, that's true. You hear that more and more.
Exactly.
So how is that impacting this whole world of membranophones?
Well, now you're talking about pushing boundaries. What can these instruments even be? Look at electronic drum kits. Those are so complex now, but they're still using those same principles. A membrane that vibrates to make the sound.
It's wild to think about how those two worlds are coming together, acoustic and electronic. So for someone listening who's like, yeah, that's totally me. I want to shape sound. I want to make these instruments. What are some of the pros and cons they got to think about?
Okay, so good news first. It's all about creativity, right? You're literally building something that makes music that people connect with.
Yeah.
And you get to work with your hands, too. It's not just sitting at a desk. You're taking these raw materials and turning them into something amazing.
It's got to feel good. But what about like actually making a living doing this? Can you swing it as a membranophone musical instrument maker?
That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
So you can be your own boss, totally. Some people start their own workshops, but just finding a job that says, hey, we need a membranophone maker, those aren't exactly everywhere.
It's not like every music store is like banjo maker wanted.
Right. It's super specific.
Mm.
And honestly, a lot of crafts are like this income isn't always steady. You got to be passionate about it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So for the people who are passionate, though, what's the path look like? Are there specialties they can get into?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The research didn't get super detailed, but I can tell you a lot of makers find their thing. Like maybe they make a certain instrument, a bodhran from Ireland or a djembe from West Africa, and they become known for it.
You're the person to go to for that instrument. That's cool. Are there other ways to specialize?
Definitely. Some people, it's all about the material they use. Like maybe they're masters with certain woods, maple mahogany, that kind of thing.
Right.
Or they're pushing the boundaries with metal alloys in their instruments.
So you can become this total expert, whether it's the whole instrument, one material, or even a specific way of putting it all together. But I'm guessing you need some serious skills to really nail this. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, you need a whole toolbox full of them. I mean, obviously, you got to know instruments inside and out, but it goes way beyond that. Remember how we were saying acoustics are important? You have to get how sound works with all these shapes and materials. It's kind of crazy.
So like you're almost picturing the sound inside the instrument as you're building it?
That's it. You're not just building a thing. You're shaping how it creates sound. That means knowing how big it should be, what kind of wood or metal the membrane, how thick it is, how tight it is. It all changes the sound.
Wow, so there's a lot of science behind the art. What else is important?
Well, a lot of times you're working directly with musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you got to be able to talk to them, understand what they want, and translate that into the instrument.
Yeah.
That takes good communication and being able to really listen.
You know what else really got me in the research? It called out knowing about metalworking and organic building materials. I mean, it's not all about wood.
Nope. There's a ton of different stuff these makers use.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like they might shape metal to make like the resonating chamber in a drum, or they're out there finding specific animal hides for how they sound.
Huh, so it's like this mix of old and new.
Keeps things interesting.
And then in the research, it mentioned acoustics as a key thing to know.
Right. Makes sense, though.
It does, but like I didn't think about it at first.
It's easy to forget. They're not just building something, they're building how it sounds. They got to get how those sound waves work, how they bounce around inside, to get the right tone.
Whoa, they really are like sonic architects or something.
Definitely.
So like with music always changing, what's next for all this? Would these instruments change too?
It's a good question. I mean, we've got electronic drum kits already.
Right.
But what if it goes further? Like, imagine an instrument that's both acoustic and electronic, or ones with sensors in them so they work with software.
Whoa.
Crazy new sounds.
Yeah, like blending the old school with the high tech. That's wild.
And for someone making these instruments, that's a whole new challenge. You got to know the old ways and all this new stuff like electronics, maybe even coding.
Wow. So the future of making music could be like super high tech, but still with someone's hands making it. That's pretty cool to think about.
It is.
Well, for anyone listening out there who's thinking about this career path, it seems like a pretty awesome one, full of history, but also like wide open for what's next.
I'd agree with that.
We went from it's all about hitting drums to there's so much more to it. It's been a wild ride. Until next time, everyone, keep those ears open.